Basement is a 2022 film written, produced, and directed by Robert Rosenbaum, who directly sent me a screener to check out this film in order to give my honest feedback. It's based on his stage play of the same name and can currently be seen on Amazon Video as well as some other digital platforms. It stars Brian Krause as Jake, a father trying to protect his daughter from some kind of war-torn bombing situation that's going on outside by huddling together in a makeshift bomb shelter, which of course is his basement. Little by little, his neighbors start requesting asylum in the shelter, which he's happy to provide, but not everybody in the group is accepting of each other, and when they get locked inside that basement, they have to learn to live together or die alone. I love that quote, which I borrowed from Lost, of course. Live together, die alone, which is essentially what this entire movie is centered on. Togetherness, humanity, acceptance. Those that are against a more PC or politically correct or woke narrative are bound to hate the movie because there's a lot of it in there. But I honestly thought that it was very smart, as it not only showcased a very real possibility of people being forced to work together in a war situation, especially now with the whole Ukraine thing, but it also faces racism in general and how toxic one person, can make an experience for everybody else just by being racist and paranoid. One thing that I love to see, and I almost never do, is a real friendship when it comes down to being friends with somebody who is on the wrong path, like with racism. In Basement, you have this vitriolic, hateful man that really is racist, and the main character in this, Jake, isn't. But he is his friend. He never knew that his friend was this horrible racist person in general, but I love how they handled it in the movie, which is just, look, you're being racist right now. And the racist guy's like, well, what does that make you? And Jake's just like, that just makes me your friend. And I love that line. In today's world, and especially with cancel culture that I personally just think makes everything worse, I don't know how realistic that is. I don't know if we would continue being friends with people once we've learned that they are racist. But I do love seeing it in movies and TV shows. I mean, there was a very similar scene in the 6th season, I think, of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I don't remember everything that happened in that show, but there was one scene specifically with a couple of best friends that this movie reminded me of, and that scene still gives me goosebumps to this day. Now, Robert, if you are watching, I wanted to say that this film definitely entertained me a lot. It made me think. You know, it's important, it's relevant, especially in today's world, and I could also tell that it was indeed adapted from a stage play. That's not a dig. I was reminded over and over again of 12 Angry Men, a film, a play, and a story that I've always loved. Because both this and 12 Angry Men were one-room drama/thrillers that force all of these different diverse characters to have heated discussions. And really, it's their dialogue and acting alone that carries the tension of the movie. That's another thing, the acting. This is a low-budget film that was shot in 9 days. 9. Which to me means that there wasn't a million different alternate takes for all these scenes. But even so, I can't think of a single actor in this movie that didn't do a great job. They all did. This is an emotionally driven character, culture, and society study that's not afraid to be open and raw when it comes down to touchy subjects such as prejudice and xenophobia. I did want to touch on one negative though. One. It's a technical issue through and through, and it is unfortunate, but it might only affect you if you're paying as close of attention as I was, and that's sound design. I had some pretty good headphones on when I was watching the movie, and sound for me was up pretty loud, so I think it completely depends on how you listen to the movie. But for me, sound design and sound mixing specifically was kind of flawed. I want to say that the crew probably didn't have the best microphones, or maybe they just didn't have the best studio to record their lines or Foley work with, but I heard the buzz or the atmospheric noise whenever somebody would say a line. So I heard the recording for the ADR begin and end. So the buzz would cut in, you'd hear that faint background noise, they would say their line, and then it would cut off every single time, every line. Good mics though shouldn't have that kind of buzzing, and even if it did, it should also be avoided by recording in a soundproof studio, basically. Sound effects as well, such as footsteps specifically, but also some ringtones and other added sounds, had what I perceived to be an unrealistically loud volume. Like the walking noises sometimes sounded louder than talking, or the ringtone sounded more like a normal audio clip that you would add in post instead of throwing, say, a low-pass filter on it for when it's in somebody's pocket, and then a reverb filter for when it's out of the pocket, which I personally would have done. I'll give you an example. Like that. Overall, though, even though I find the film to have a technical flaw in its sound design, I still consider it to be a fairly decent movie that has a great message, strong acting. The basement begins to turn into a bit of a character in and of itself, which I always love to see when a setting turns into a character. And I'd not only love to rewatch the movie at a later date, but honestly, I would have loved to see the theatrical play version of the story as well. It seems to be a story that would work very, very well in that medium. Looking at my final score for a second, this is something that I split into two. First, I look at the technical score, which I call my unbiased score. This is as close to an objective score that I can give, and it just kind of looks at what a movie does and does not do. And I gave Basement a fairly decent unbiased score of 78% because honestly, sound design is only one thing in a movie. There's a lot more that goes into it. Yes, it could have been better, but this film really draws a majority of its strength from rather the acting, the writing, the pacing, the story depth, its sense of diversity, all of these different things. They all combine and they help me ignore the technical issues that the film ultimately had with the sound because I was just so invested in the story, in the characters. The other side of the score is, well, my bias score, which completely revolved around how I felt about the movie. And I was engaged, I was entertained, it made me think and reflect, and even made me want to see the theatrical play for which it's based. I did think that the plot was slightly unoriginal because a few years ago I saw a movie called The Divide, which also focused on a bunch of people at the end of the world in a bunker of sorts. And even 10 Cloverfield Lane was similar. So honestly, it's kind of a trope if we're being honest with each other, but it is a fun trope too. So this bias score is actually 80%. When we combine those two scores together, you got 78, you got 80, we wind up with a final rating for Basement, which I have at a solid 79%. That's a letter grade of B on my personal letter grading scale. But guys, have you seen Basement? If you have, I want to hear your thoughts about it in the comment section down below. And as for YouTube, you guys know what to do. Hit the like, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell to be notified when I come up with my next review. And whenever that is, peace out.